In this video, we're creating an email agent that is literally going to run your email account. This is so freaking cool. Take a look at this. So when an email comes in to your Gmail account, just like this email came in right here, we're going to automatically label it. So we're going to sort all of your emails into specific categories, like for example, promotions or social tab or sales or receipts or recruitment or personal. And then we're going to take whatever action it is that you want it to take. So for example, in this particular workflow, I had a personal email come through. Like you can see here, it sorted it as personal, and then it created a follow-up email where all I have to do is just approve it and click send. So we can create drafts in this case. We can reply to messages automatically. We can send messages or forward them. So for example, if we have receipts coming through, maybe we want to forward that over to our accountant. We can go ahead and do that. If there's sales, we can draft a reply. If there is a social message, we could, for example, create a summary of that, post it into Google Sheets so that we can just quickly skim through all these emails. And if it's a promotion, well, maybe for example, you don't want that and you just want to mark it as read. We're going to go ahead and build this system out. It's super simple, but it is incredibly powerful. And the whole idea here is to essentially free up your inbox so that you don't have like an overflowing inbox of like tens of thousands of emails. So we'll trim it down so that you can stay focused, organized, and get the most out of your email. Just obviously being super productive. So if that sounds like something you guys are interested in, we are going to be building this out today in this particular video. If you guys are interested in downloading these blueprints, all you have to do is hit these three dots and import the file in. The blueprints will be down below in the description for free for you to download, and you can get this exact workflow in a matter of a couple seconds, but we're going to be building this out together right now. So the first thing we need to do is set up a trigger inside our n8n account. And what that trigger is essentially saying every time we receive a new email in our inbox, we need to go ahead and start this workflow. And so the first trigger that we're going to choose is Gmail, specifically this on message receive trigger. And there's a couple things that I want to set up here to get this operating properly. So we have credentials to connect with. Now, if you haven't done so already, just go ahead and create credentials to log into your Gmail account. You can just simply click this sign in with Google. Because I've already actually done that, I'm just going to close this and move on. Now, the next thing that I want to talk about here is polling times, because this is probably one of the most important things about this whole entire operation. If you don't get this right, it can be pretty costly. So effectively, what polling means is that this scenario, and I'm going to switch over to my white blackboard here, this scenario is going to run every single time that n8n wants to access your Gmail account, right? So a poll is just sending a request being like, hey, is there any mail that's currently available for us to process this workflow? And regardless of whether there is, right, mail, or regardless of whether there isn't mail, it's still going to cost you money to do this poll. And the problem is if you're doing it at a 1 minute interval, that means you're going to be firing off 1,440 different operations every single month, right? So that's obviously a lot. And your intro plan might only have 2,500. So literally within maybe 2 days, you're going to go through this. So we need to slow down this polling so that you're not spending as much money. And how we do that is by slowing down the cadence here. So every hour is a bit slow. Every minute is a bit fast. So we're going to choose this custom expression here. And what I want to do is enter in a Cron expression. So we can just search up Cron expression n8n, and let's go to their actual documentation here, and we can just copy in something like this. So maybe like we'll do every 5 minutes, or maybe every 10 minutes or something like that. I'm just going to stick with 5 for now. What this is saying is that instead of every minute, now we're going to be sending it off at every 5 minutes. We're going to be polling, right? Which will cost an operation. And so that is more or less it. We can go ahead and save this. If you guys want to, you can still filter it down and add in additional things here. But to me, that looks good. I'm actually just going to fetch this data and see if there's anything. We can see that there's actually, I think my face is blocking that, but there's no results being found here. So that's okay. We've officially set up our first trigger here. I'm going to go ahead, save this workflow. And just to start this trigger, I'm actually going to load in some data. So I'm going to go into my inbox here, and I'm just going to send myself a message. So that way we have test data to work with. So circling back into our n8n environment, I'm going to test this, and we're going to see if in fact that email that we just sent off was loaded in properly. And we can see that it was, right? Snippet is test, and test is the subject, and I sent it off. Perfect. So what I want to do is, just in the spirit of making this as quick as possible, I'm going to pin this data. What pinning means is that every time this scenario is run, it's going to use this sample data so that I don't have to go back and forth every single freaking time and go back to Gmail and send an email off. It's just going to speed up the workflow significantly. So the next thing that I want to do here is I want to do sentiment analysis, and we're going to use the text classifier here. Okay, so we'll go ahead and use text classifier. And essentially what's going on here is we're going to pass in two things. I want to pass in the subject of the email, and I want to pass in the email body. And we're just going to ask ChatGPT, like, hey, you know, is like, what do you think this email belongs to? Like, what category? Is this a personal email? Is this primary, promotional, social? And we can just add as many labels down here as we want here. So this is just going to effectively use AI to determine what the email is, right? So I'm just dragging in the subject here. You can go to like schema or table or JSON, but I'm just in schema right now. And I'm literally just dragging this over into the block here. So I'm going to copy this and just move it into the subject line. And it says JSON.subject here. This is essentially the exact same way. This is just this particular subject line written out. And then we have the email body, which is the snippet over here. So we're going to paste that in, and we can essentially create as many categories as we want, right? So maybe I'm going to do like promotions, and then I'm going to do social, I'm going to do personal, maybe I want to do sales, recruitment, and that looks good for now. Maybe, yeah, I think I'll just stick with this. And we just need to write like a short little description of what this is. So this is any email looking to sell me things. Social is any email from a social media site like YouTube or Facebook or Instagram, and so on and so forth. Okay, sweet. So we have our categories. Promotions, this is anything, anyone looking to sell me things. Social, any emails from a social media site like YouTube or Facebook. Personal, an email sent from a friend or family member. Sales is anything regarding like client documents, sales, all that kind of stuff. Recruitment is anyone looking for a job or to join our team, and receipts are transactional emails. So this looks good to me. And so essentially all we need to do to make this work properly is we need to attach a model. And what this is saying is like, we have this built-in function here to classify text, but in order for us to understand what text is, we need to have some form of reasoning, and that reasoning is going to come from an AI model. The cool thing about n8n is they allow you to choose whatever AI model that you want. So if you like, for example, Anthropic, you can use that. If you want DeepSeek, you can use that, or Google Gemini, or whatever. And for the purpose of this tutorial, I'm going to be using ChatGPT. And GPT-40-mini is good enough for me. There's literally nothing else that I need to add here. So we're good to go, and we can move this over, and we can give this a test run and just take a look and see what it comes up with for this. So I'm going to click back into this, and it looks like, oh, that's weird. It didn't actually give me a result there. I'm just going to take a look at the executions tab to see what happened here. So we can take a look at the past runs in this particular module here and just see what it came up with. So potentially it just came into the promotions tab, but it doesn't actually look like there was an output for this. So that's a bit interesting. I just want to see there was a input in here, right? And so maybe it just can't really determine, you know, between these. We could also add like a miscellaneous tab in here too. So miscellaneous, anything that doesn't fall within the other categories. Okay, cool. And we can try this one more time just to see if that potentially works. And perfect. So we can see here that it did work, in fact, this time. And And yeah, so it went down the miscellaneous tab here. At the last, you can see that it's green at the bottom there. And so that's the first part, is we're just classifying which category do we actually want to put this email into, right? And so from there, we're going to create labels like personal, right? I'm also going to add another one in here, which is like recruitment, for example, and I can add in receipts. And what else do I want to do in here? Recruitment, receipts, sales, miscellaneous, sales, and miscellaneous. And everything else is just going to use like the default categories within Gmail. So we'll go ahead and set this up. The next thing I want to do is enter in Gmail here, and we're going to add a label to a message. So we can search by label, and we can just add it to the particular message here, or the thread, whichever one works for you. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to add it to the message here. And effectively, all we need to do is just add in the particular ID here. And you'll see that there's no data, right? And the reason why there's no data is because right now, at the time, we haven't ran the Gmail module through the promotions. But if we came into miscellaneous, for example, and we did the same thing, then all of a sudden we could see the data. So let's go ahead and add this for recruit or miscellaneous, just because right now it's only past the miscellaneous category. So we're going to go ahead and add to this, and now all the data is on the left side here, right? And so I'm going to go ahead and add in the message ID here, which is just right here. So we're going to drag that over to the message ID, and we can choose the right category, which is miscellaneous here. And this is going to automatically go ahead and mark that as miscellaneous. We can try this out here. I'm just going to delete this, test the workflow. And if we circle back, this should be categorized now as miscellaneous. And it's also going to be in our miscellaneous folder here as well. So this is working so far. Now we can go ahead and do the exact same thing for all these other modules here. I'm just going to duplicate this up top, and we're going to change this to promotions. So add a label here as promotions. And there's a bit of repetitiveness here, obviously, because we're going to have to go ahead and do this again. I'm just hitting Control or Command D to be able to duplicate these over and over and over again. And I'm going to go ahead and pause this video and come back when these are all done. So I've gone ahead and I've added all of these additional labels here, just so that you guys didn't have to sit here for like the last 5 minutes of me frantically trying to create these. But I'll just go over these and show you a couple. So we got like category promotions, and we got category social here. And then we got category, we have the sales label, which is the custom sales label that we created here, and so on and so forth all the way down the pipeline, right? And so essentially from here on out, now what we can do is we have emails, they're coming in, they're all being categorized, right? This is so freaking cool. All of a sudden you have an inbox right now that is going to be completely organized. You're going to be staying on top of everything. You're going to know exactly when an email is coming in, where to find it, in what category. It's just going to be so much nicer to keep everything organized. And so the next thing that we can do here is we can actually automate the process of dealing with these emails, right? Like for example, maybe I want to automatically send a message back to this person and handle some common sales inquiry. Or maybe if it's a personal message, I want to create a draft, but I don't want to send it off immediately. And so we can go ahead and do that. So let's start first of all with the promotions tab up here. So we have this pinned data here. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to edit this just so that we can run it down the promotions tab. So the snippet here, I'm just literally going to write in, this is a promotional email selling you things. And the reason I'm saying this is just because I want the text classifier to be like, oh, this is something that's selling me things, so it can go down this path. Why that's applicable here is because I want it to go down here so we can test this out, right? So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add in a Gmail, and maybe we just want to mark it as read, right? So I'm going to mark a message as read, and you can see here we don't have any input data. We'll go ahead and unlink this, and we'll test this workflow. it's going to classify it. Now run it down the promotions tab. And the reason it went down here again is because I just put this snippet in here being like, this is a promotional email, just giving it some mock data. And now we have all the data on the left side here. So I can quite simply just come in here, put the ID of the message here, and then mark it as read, right? And so now if we come back into our inbox here, I'll actually mark this as unread so we can test this out and run this one more time. Let's give it a shot. Sweet. And so automatically within Gmail, might take a couple seconds here, but it should mark this as read, right? And there we go. So that's cool. We can mark all promotionally. And this is just an example. I mean, you can do that with promotions. You don't have to do it, but this is just one of many use cases that you could have here. And so the next thing here is social tab. Maybe for instance, we just want to summarize these emails and we want to put them into a Google Sheet here. So we can go ahead and do that. We're going to test this data again by just changing this and saying this is a social email from YouTube, and we're just saying that again to run down the social path. I'm going to exit out of this, and we can set up another module here, which is OpenAI, and I want to summarize. So I'm going to message this model here and just ask it to summarize everything. Now, if you guys haven't done so already, for this to work, you'll need to create a connection here. And so in the OpenAI module, you'll need an API key. All you need to do is go to platform open AI. Oops, that is not how you spell platform. So we'll go to our platform and then log into our account here. And once you're signed in, we can go to dashboard, API keys, and then just create one right here. And then once you create it, then you can go ahead, and if I just go like test here and were to grab this, I could just paste that in here. Just make sure that you add $5 to your account. Otherwise, you're not gonna be able to access ChatGPT. So in order to add $5 to your account, you can just go into the profile here, go into billing, and then add $5 and you're good to go. And once we're back inside, what we can do is just say, and just continue on with this workflow of summarizing the email that we got in here. So for example, maybe I just want to use 4.0 mini as the model. 4.0 mini. We'll wait for this to load. And we're going to add in a couple messages here. So the first one is just going to be a system message telling ChatGPT what to do. So a system message is essentially like, you're essentially providing a just overview of what it is you're looking for ChatGPT to do. So you're an intelligent bot at summarizing emails, and that is good enough. And we're going to add in a user message. This, you can think about user message as like the input of this message, and all we have to do here is load in data. Currently we don't have anything, so we'll go ahead and test this workflow again. It's going to go down the social path, and now we have everything on this side here. So the text is going to be the actual email text that we have here. So we'll actually add in subject and email body. This is good for me. The snippet is the body here, so we'll paste that down here. And the subject is just right over here. So we'll go ahead and copy that in here as well. And obviously this is like not going to be super easy for it to summarize because, well, I mean, it's like literally a one word email. I'd be like shocked if ChatGPT could make it any more concise than that, but we can go ahead and just test this out and at least get some form of a response here to see what it comes up with. Okay, cool. And so we have the content here, which is the output. And so in a traditional email, and not just one that I threw together in 2 seconds with tests in there, it would actually go ahead and in the content section here, it would summarize that particular email. And so we can take that summary and we can add it into a Google Sheet, right? So I've already gone ahead and done that. So I'm just gonna go into Sheets here, sheets.google.com. And I have created this here, this just handy, nice little nifty spreadsheet. So we have ID of the email, the date, subject line, summary, and snippet. And so we can just go ahead and dump that in here, just as an example. So we'll choose Google Sheets, and I'm going to add or update a row. We're going to choose this option, and we just want to connect into this particular sheet here. So again, if you haven't done so already, you'll have to create this connection and just sign in with Google one more time, just to give it access to not only your Gmail account, but also your Google Sheets as well. I've already done so, so I'm just going to skip over this. And we can then go ahead and select the sheet here. And for me, it's email summary, n8n. And you have a lot of different operations here, like you could create, you could append. I think actually, yeah, we'll just choose create or append for now. And what this means is that appending is just adding a row, and updating is, hey, if this row already exists, then instead of creating a new duplicate, let's go ahead and just update the existing row on file. And so sheet here is just sheet 1. It's the tab down here, right? By default, it's just listed as sheet 1. And the next thing that it's going to ask for is the column to match on. And the column to match on is essentially saying, like, if we want to update something, and this isn't necessary for this particular automation, but if we want to update something, it's like, how do we know what to update it? We need to find a unique identifier, and that unique identifier will be the ID of the email, because that will always be unique and it's never going to be the same across emails. So we'll go ahead, put the ID in here and choose the column to match on, which is, if we want to update something, it's going to be based on the ID, if we find the same ID. For the date, we can change this from a fixed field to an expression. Expression just means that we can add in custom fields like this, right? And we're just going to hit the curly braces twice here. So I'm just typing this in, right? So I'm just typing it in twice, and then we're going to hit $ now. And this is going to give us the result down here, which is the exact second that this was processed. Subject line we can get from the particular email, which is down here. So I'm going to drag that in. Summary is going to be from ChatGPT, which is up here in the content section. And then we have the email snippet, which is the original snippet here, over here. So that's just one example. We can go ahead, test this out, and see if this worked properly. So we're classifying it, we're sending it to social, and then we're just adding it in to this particular Google Sheet, and there we go, right? Okay, cool. On to the next thing. Maybe if it's a personal email, we just want to create a draft, right? Maybe for personal matters, you don't want to automatically send an email, you just want to have a quick once over, right? And so we can go ahead and we can do that. For the personal email here, we're actually, before we test this out, we're going to go back to the trigger and just update this and say this is a personal, this is a personal email from a friend. And we'll save this and we'll create a draft here. So Gmail and create a draft. Sweet. And the resource again is going to be draft, and we're going to create that. And the subject line can be whatever it is that you want. Actually, I don't think this is the right one. So we'll go ahead and create a draft here. So I'm going to type in Gmail here and create a draft. Awesome. And from here on out, we don't even need to add in a subject line just because we're going to be replying to the thread here. And the message that we want to create, we're going to have to use ChatGPT to do so. And one more option that I want to do here is I just want to add in thread ID. And this thread ID is essentially more or less going to be the thread that we reply to. So I don't want to just create a generic draft. I want to reply specifically to this message. And so that looks good to me. We'll just test this out first of all so that we can load in data. And it looks like we're drawing an error from this module here. So I'm going to disconnect it and we're going to give it a shot again. And I'm going to move this out here, duplicate this by hitting Command D or Control D. And we're going to link this back together. You're an intelligent bot at replying to emails. And we have the system message done. For the text, the user message, which is just the input, here's the email to reply to. And that looks good to me. And then we just need to do one last thing, is we need to format this message properly. So I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna choose assistant. So you can think about an assistant message as just like the output, right? So how we want the data to come out as. And so we can format the data in any way that we want in this assistant message. So user message is the input, assistant message is the output. And I'm just gonna say, please format the data in JSON format. JSON format is essentially like literally just this on the side. You can see it, it's just easy, we can drag and drop it. So we want it to be in the same format as the rest of the data in n8n. And so we'll put a colon here, and more or less, I'm just gonna create JSON. This will be in the blueprints for free down below if you guys want to actually just literally copy and paste it. But essentially this is the format of JSON data. We can do subject line. We're getting two pieces of information back. We're getting subject line and we're getting email body, right? And so this is our data. It's just gonna provide us with when it replies back to this subject line, even though we don't technically need that, but we're gonna duplicate this for the rest of the modules, and then email body back as well. So it's gonna give us this so that we can easily plug and play that into the next system. If you guys also want, you could just go into ChatGPT and it's like, hey, please create me JSON data to reply back to an email, include in there subject line and email body, and it should just actually create this JSON for you, right? And this is exactly what I just did, except I just had slightly different keys here, and it doesn't really matter. I mean, these keys are subjective. They can change whatever you want them to be, and it's just giving sample data here. You could go ahead and delete that, and that's exactly what I've done here. So let's go ahead, let's try that out, and then program the rest of this back in. We can take a look and see the response. And this is actually giving us text back, which is not good because we don't want it as like JSON data in text format. We want JSON data like this, so we can click and drag and drop it in, but this is like combining multiple things into a text. So this is like multiple data types that you're mixing in to each other. And so how we remove that is we just output the context as JSON data, and instead of it coming back JSON data in text, it's going to come back in actual JSON data. So we'll go ahead and test this one more time and then look at the response. And now we have this beautiful JSON data where we can just literally copy and paste subject line and email body back in. So now when we go ahead and we connect this email back in to this workflow here, all we need to do is just copy the email body message in here, and then it'll give us a draft reply. Hey there, thanks for reaching out. I'm glad to hear from you. How have you been? Let's catch up soon. And lastly, we just need to add this email thread in here. And that's going to be from the first module down here, which is the Gmail trigger, right? And we have the thread ID. So we're going to pass this in, and that's telling it, hey, let's reply to this particular thread, not just some random draft email somewhere on the account, but actually reply back to this. So that looks good to me. We can go ahead and we can give this a shot. Oh, it looks like there's an error here. And we can put in subject line, I guess, too, which is, oh, weird. Okay, we got disconnected from the data source, so I'm gonna have to delete that for now. And then just paste it back in here. So essentially what I did there was I ran it one more time just so that we could get the data here to map it in. And so I'm just gonna paste the subject line back in there, and we are good to go. We can go ahead and test this out, and it should actually create a draft reply to that email thread. So workflow has been successfully executed. Let's go ahead and refresh this page. And now we have the draft, right? And so there's a couple things to this. Number one is that we probably want a to email, and also we just want to make sure that we're actually including the name of the person, and we're including your name down below as well. So let's go ahead and do that. So first things first, in the Gmail module, we're going to add an option, and it's going to be to email, and this is going to be the email that we want to send to, and we can get that email from right here. So essentially it's going to be the from email address here. And then from there, we just need to go into ChatGPT and just make sure that we're saying in the user message, which is the input, we're saying, hey, here's the subject line, here's the email body. We're just gonna say who this is from. This email is from : and we'll go ahead and pass in the from section here. And in the actual system message, which is like giving general context to ChatGPT, I'm gonna say, please sign off on all emails as follows. And it's gonna be best Jono. And then we can go ahead and try this workflow out one more time and see if in fact those changes were made and everything looks good now. So I'm gonna go ahead and refresh the page here. And I'm just gonna actually delete this draft and try it one more time, because I don't think you can have two drafts in the same email. Okay, cool. So let's go back, let's take a look. And here we go. So we're replying back to the person, hey, thanks for reaching out, how have you been? Let's catch up soon. And so it's now not saying like the name or anything like that, which is pretty nice. Now, for whatever reason, it didn't even include the best Jono in there. So that's a bit strange here. Let's just take a look. And anyways, you can play around with this and essentially get it to work as you want. And you can add in additional system messages like, hey, don't include it all in one line, and separate, also separate paragraphs by line breaks and so on and so forth. But just for the purpose of this tutorial, I'm not going to spend too much time on that, because that's not necessarily what I want to spend a lot of time on. So the next thing is sales. So maybe in this instance, we can just reply back to people. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to choose edit here. And I'm going to say this is a sales email from a client. And we'll go ahead and save that. And we can run this now, and it's going to go down that sales path here. And maybe on sales, we just want to automatically send a message to the person, right? So instead of creating a draft, we can just go ahead and send that over. I'm going to duplicate these down one row to the sales section here. And same kind of deal. I'm going to open this up and just say you're an intelligent bot replying to sales emails. And we'll just say sign off at the bottom. Here's the message. That all looks good to me. And we can go ahead and instead of creating a draft, we're going to send a message, and we'll just go ahead and include the subject line and email and all that kind of stuff from ChatGPT. But you can see here again that the data has been removed. So we have to unfortunately go back and delete this, test it one more time to actually get all this data from ChatGPT and all that kind of stuff in order to be able to send off that email. Okay, perfect. And from here on out, we can just map in the rest of the variables. 2 is going to be here. And we have the subject line and everything else, which is up here, right? So looks good to me. The only thing that I want to do is I want to make sure that we don't append the n8n attribution, because if we send off an email and it's like, this email is from n8n, obviously it's not going to be a good touch. So let's go ahead and delete that, save this, and give this a shot. So I'm going to test the workflow and see how this works. Okay, everything's running, and it looks like we've actually gone ahead and sent that email. So I'm going to go ahead and refresh the page. And it looks like we sent the message, but we didn't actually send it to like on that same thread here, which is problematic. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to delete this. I'm going to add another Gmail module, and it's going to be thread. So we're going to be replying to a message, and let's try this one more time. So we're going to reply message ID. We're getting from Gmail, and the message we're getting from ChatGPT, which is the email body. And we just want to make sure that we remove that append from n8n, and that looks good to me. This should work out of the box this time. So we'll go ahead and try this out. And perfect. So We'll refresh. And we can see here that now we have replied to it saying, hey, thanks for your email, blah, 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 right? And so that's how you can actually automatically send emails instead of just creating a draft. And then let's say for recruitment, for example, actually, you know what? I'm just going to skip over recruitment because these two are going to be pretty much the same. For receipts, maybe we want to forward this off to somebody, right? And so how we can do that is we can just come back in and we can add in a send email. And maybe in this instance, we're just going to forward this over to our accounting department, right? So as simple as that, we can just send it off. Instead of having the to being from who sent the email, right? So if somebody sends a receipt over, you don't want to reply back to that person. You want to forward that over to your accountant. So maybe just in this case, I'm going to pretend like, you know, this is my accountant's email, even though it's essentially the same email here, but you know, this is acting as the accountant's email, and we can go ahead and just enter in forward here and also in the body as well. And yeah, this is just going to forward that email that came into your account straight over to somebody else. So let's go ahead and change this to receipts now. So I'm going to come into this test data here and say this is a receipt email from a software. Save this, and we can test this workflow one more time. Okay, sweet. And then that's been forwarded over. We can take a look at our inbox again and just see that, you know, we have this forwarded message here. It did come up blank. There's no data, and that is just because it wasn't mapping in the correct fields. And we can come back here and just change that. So we'll say that the subject line is from the initial email here, which is down here. Awesome. Same thing with the HTML here. We're just going to say this is the snippet. And then that looks good. Save this, test it out again. Circle back, refresh, and here we go, right? So now we have the message being sent there. And then finally we have miscellaneous, and yeah, you could essentially do whatever it is that you wanted with this. I mean, for me, like, yeah, this is just more like a catch-all for you if it doesn't fit into any of the other responses. But yeah, there's a lot of stuff you could do here. I mean, for example, you could just send off like a Twilio message or a Telegram message to yourself being like, hey, you have a new message here. So we could do like Telegram, for example, or Twilio, and just be like, hey, when this message comes in, if it's important, then send it off, right? And so I'm not going to go through the process of building that out, but I think that that's just like a cool idea of how you could go about setting this up. So you have multiple different ways of dealing with many different messages here, right? So for example, just going through this again, if it's a promotional email, maybe you just mark it as read. If it's a social email, you summarize it and put it into a Google Sheet. If it's a personal email, maybe you create a draft so that you can reply back. And maybe even you send a text message here being like, hey, this draft has been created, let's send it off. If it's a sales email, maybe you reply immediately. If it's a receipts email, maybe you forward it to somebody. And if it's a miscellaneous or whatnot, maybe, I don't know, you can do whatever it is that you want. And so this is just a great way to essentially have something like n8n manage your entire inbox here for you, so that as soon as emails come in, they're being labeled properly, they're being responded to. You don't even need to do it yourself. You don't need to hire somebody to do it. It's just automatically done for pennies on the dollar using n8n. So I hope you guys found value in this video. If you did, make sure to like and leave any comments if you have questions, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Thank you very much for watching, and bye-bye.